Video games are better than Sia or Netflix at capturing the autistic experience without even trying to, because so much of autism is internal, it's mechanical, it's experiential. Watching a character flap their hands or struggle to emote doesn't help you understand the series of gears and triggers that put those processes into motion. Showing autistic genius doesn't demystify the cognitive resources that autistic people have access to. Autistic short films, especially, try so hard with the same set of autistic film conventions. They'll smush the audio. They'll use close POV shots splattered with visual distortions. They'll amplify meltdowns with dramatic music.
Ron, go back to your room.
There are shows that are really good at portraying autism because they maximize the tools at their disposal. Extraordinary Attorney Woo uses a pastel color palette and glittery sound effects to mimic her wonder at the world around her. Autistic female character who's going into big law, which is the exact field I'm going into. It's like they're pandering to exactly 1,000 people across the globe, and I'm one of them. Quinny from Heartbreak High confronts subtle ableism from a girl she's dating. For many people, the dialogue feels pulled directly from their interpersonal tragedies. Personally, I can't relate with Australians. And by the way, both of these shows still get lambasted for not representing every possible lived experience as an autistic person. I've seen these shows get criticized for showing too much ableism. I've seen them criticized for not discussing ableism enough. Maybe one day we'll be equally as harsh on media with minorities as we are on media that pretends we don't exist. These film techniques never quite achieve an embodied autistic experience. The film medium only has access to sound and sight. It has access to plot lines, which are most effective when the viewer is autistic and can fill in the gaps with their own experiences. If they want to make the viewer empathize, they're kind of just forced to show bad things happening to autistic people, which turns into this horrible exploitation fest. Do you like a little meltdown with your social gathering? Maybe that's why autistic shows and movies feel overly dramatic, because the experience of being autistic feels weighty, and movie directors just think that means make that autistic kid cry on screen. This video is my petition to slow the mass production of overly dramatized short films on autism, because it's gotten out of hand. Sundance does not need more autistic films. Video games do. I mean, they have Celeste for depression, Gris for grief, they've got Fortnite for ADHD, they've got Omori for depression too, I think. They've got 2 games. It's our turn next. Hey, listen, we'll talk about you later. But truly, we only have Symmetra, a few secondary characters, and some autistic headcanon characters. Hot take, I don't actually hate the blend of autism and combat with Symmetra. That's right, I've seen the Symmetra discourse, and I disagreed, but didn't say anything, and now I'm going to talk about it in my safe space. I think it's funny that a campy cringy game with campy cringy lore is being blasted for being campy and cringy. Have you guys seen the videos? They have an e-girl fighting wars. Well, actually, that one's not too absurd. For Overwatch standards, Symmetra's voice lines are actually comparably subtle.
Cheers, love! The cavalry's here!
A pattern develops. I will shape order from chaos.
Voice lines are just an easy target because there's something a bit heavy-handed about a game telling you to feel something instead of doing the work. So we do have a lot of room for improvement. If you're autistic and you're watching this, you'll probably relate quite a bit with me, but you also might not, and that's okay. And if you're not autistic, you might also relate with me, and that's okay too, because I'm in fact human, and I do participate in the human experience like a lot of autistic people, which you think some people on the internet would understand. I am obligated to talk about sensory overload because its portrayals fall into the worst CinemaSins pitfalls. I can basically mime out these scenes by heart. This is where the visual and auditory speech employed by movies feels most like a pidgin language. Like you have complex words and concepts that can't quite be captured by a limited library of film terms, just a high-pitched noise or an unfocused lens. In many of these movies, sensory overload is characterized as a simple in and out process. If noise loud, then ears hurt, and person distressed, and ears covered. But the function can look more like, if noise loud, then ears neutral, throat closes, head foggy, neck pain, and body feverish. And if smells are intense, then the output is identical. It is dizzying to have sound and smell pluck at your nervous system in homogeneous ways. You feel spine-curlingly sick, and it's like a cut-the-right-wire bomb diffusion test. This sensory interconnectedness is actually one of the best things about being autistic. Things meant for your eyes, like speckled white paint, your taste buds receive as if they were salted mist. EDM tastes like smoky blacksmithed iron, and lo-fi tastes like wood chips and leaves. The song Country Road sounds like a frat boy looks. Afrobeats rhythms are hot and humid, rich with the smell of mango pudding, like riding open air in Mauritius at the back of my uncle's pickup truck. Faces and pictures register on my fingers like soft clay or tough metamorphic rock. If an autistic person ever tells you that you feel like grainy rock, break up. They just insulted you Shakespearean-like. My writing process is basically a sculpting process. I rework sentences until they form a shape with the right emotional resonance. This part like Mount Rushmore, soupy with distinct edges jutting out of the rock. Ruiner, goes hard. Crunchy witch house, penetrating light pulses, brutalist contours of machine bodies with wires spilling out. Corporate, would you like a bag with your purchase? Orange, cut out from the gray. Ruiner simulates that multi-sense haze and gets the player to react very much like an autistic person must. In a movie, you can only punish a viewer one way, by obscuring how much they understand. Like how Marvel movies are incomprehensibly bad. So movies insert unnecessary visual and auditory noise, which the viewer must identify and filter out if they want to understand the movie. Kind of like an autistic person trying to decipher a conversation with an ambulance siren in the background. But it's kind of missing something, because autistic people who fail to avoid bad stimuli aren't just not understanding, they're set back. Their nerves are scratched raw. Head fog gunks up every brain function. Ruiner punishes you with failure. If you fail to separate necessary from unnecessary stimuli, you fail. So you must pay attention. Ignore the sparks from shooting, the sparks from the ceiling, and definitely ignore the flashes of creepy earl across your screen. My friend said he trusted her, which makes me really worried. Here's a lightning round. Unnecessary stimuli. Arbitrary controller vibration for ambience. Necessary stimuli. Controller vibration that's telling you you're getting shot at. Unnecessary stimuli. Prop boxes. Necessary stimuli. Loot boxes with a similar shape and highlights. Unnecessary stimuli. Prop cylinders. Necessary stimuli. Barrels that explode. Unnecessary stimuli. Soundtrack that sounds like a machine gun on repeat. Necessary stimuli. The sound of actual machine guns. And if you shoot the wrong thing or get distracted by the wrong thing, you die. If you die enough, you go on academic probation. Which, by the way, unlike a regular points system, is definitely weaponizing some deep-seated fear we all have about not being intelligent or skilled in some recognizably quantifiable way. Combat in this environment primarily tests your ability to filter out sensory information and act only on the important parts. 2 or so decades ago, I became a thing that could imbibe information. I learned to read quick. I spoke exclusively French until I was 12, then fully developed my English in 2 to 3 years, with help from Animorphs, Aragorn, historical fiction, and fantasy, which really just means that I was an insufferable little kid who thought I could rule a kingdom, look good as a wolf, and absorbed none of the Animorphs' war parallels. There was a kind of stickiness to my learning. Anglophone grammar emerged easily once my language AI had its English sentence dataset reach a statistically significant size. I was winning public speaking competitions against native English speakers 5 years after learning the days of the week. Still had no friends, no bitches. I call pattern recognition sticky because it operates primarily through attraction. Events and experiences stick together based on any ounce of similarity. It is grating when reading an academic paper and seeing the author paw off the same turn of phrase or sentence structure that 3 other successful authors have begun to aestheticize. It's inconvenient and makes me seem bad-mannered when it locks me into one type of classroom seating, the type that I've identified as receiving the right level of auditory, visual, and tactile stimuli, and where post-class people naturally flow away from my eye contact line, reducing the opportunities for chit-chat. But pattern recognition is beautiful and awesome when someone asks me what I like about a friend or an art piece, and all of my known data points immediately coalesce into a genuine compliment. I've never not had an opinion on something in my life, even when I'm trying to keep the processing down to a cold hum. Movies are less comfortable representing pattern recognition because the visual language struggles with these kinds of active characteristics of autism. How do you make the viewer recognize patterns more intensely themselves? Some movies will do the mind palace thing, like pattern recognition as galactic pinball. Ping, 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 locations, names, clues, sudden, supernatural epiphany. 1, this fails because pattern recognition is a lens through which you view the world, not an occasional rabbit out of the hat moment. 2, this fails because it's ultimately an outsider's fantasy of an internal process. It aims only to impress and thrill. Everyone has been overcome by a kind of alert haze, where your mind separates normalcy from strangeness according to rules set by the game. Your eye catches on every heaving chest, or every glimmer of a coin. The game has Pavloved you into a reward-seeking missile. I've been playing Crosscode a lot recently, and it's got platforming puzzle mechanics that almost overcome the plot and combat of the game. It is my bad for not looking at the Steam page closely enough and being seduced by the RPG Maker vibes. RPG Maker graphics are to me what hyper-realistic graphics are to most people. A lot of the puzzles in Crosscode involve deciphering how the map was meant to be interacted with. You start getting a nut kick of dopamine every time a jumpable hill appears, or 2 high-rise mounds are suspiciously close together. Are they roommates? You might have come to the game to make rivals and whack moles, but now you're sitting with a pile of Swedish furniture parts, and every piece has its place. You've got intuitive measurements of everything, and any dowel fitting the dimensions gets you starry-eyed. That's you bubbling over with pattern recognition, intensified by game mechanics to a more clinically significant level. A lot of puzzle games are like this, stripping back every element until all that is left is patterns and recognizing them. Autistic pattern recognition does fail. It fails when, like real AI, there aren't enough data points. I heard a psychologist describe it as a tendency to overfit data. In statistics, overfitting occurs when someone produces a model that's too closely aligned to a limited set of data points. So for example, let's say I'm asking you to figure out what this 14 number data set is like, but I only show you 3 out of the 14 numbers, 2, 4, and 12. Overfitting would be you assuming stupidly that all of the numbers are even. Left unexamined, this can be destructive, leading to the consolidation of extravagant stereotypes and erroneous logic. I unfortunately knew someone, also autistic, who would respond to every mention of a minority group as if it were a racist, homophobic word association game. Filipino person? Good food. Romanian? Thievery. Gay people? Catty. Poor people in general? Infighting. In Crosscode, you're probably going to be introduced to platforming through one of the first quests, a fence climbing challenge. Hero, you must tightrope this long-ass fence to complete the quest. You see a few more of these walk along the fence quests or secrets afterwards. They're not difficult, but they do leave you a little bit confused, because they're definitely more difficult than the rest of the platforming you're doing for the first few hours during early game. This mid-game section, which for me was like 20 hours in, contains platforming that is the same, but easier. Using the video game progression framework, which sort of dictates our engagement with any game, Crosscode tricks part of its player base into an overfitting mindset. If this is the quasi-tutorial the game leads you to believe, then you should climb everything approximating this level of technical difficulty. Rails will guide you to enlightenment. You start to see any thin piece of elevated material as an invitation to parkour. Hours hopping around Rookie Harbor, thinking that the other puzzles would match that Cirque du Soleil energy. I've spent some time thinking about what would help simulate autistic social difficulties without being reductively Big Bang about it. And this bait and switch is it. Learning social conventions means constantly unlearning rules, depending on the context and people involved. These are just some of the few I've learned. Say hi to be friendly, but not too many times in a short span of time. And do wave to acquaintances, but only in the hallway, and not in class if they sit more than 3 seats away from you, and not in a test-taking situation. And when someone says, if you'd like to do X thing, you can, they generally mean this as an optional offer, but the same phrase is an order if you would clearly not like X thing, and they would clearly like X thing. The best movies to depict autistic social confusion are actually clash of culture movies. The protagonist from the target audience's cultural bubble ventures into the foreign other and bumbles around to comedic effect.
Some of this, I believe it's called alu carparata.
Now, if I can't pronounce it, I don't want to eat it.
The movie plays up otherness, giving the audience permission to gawk at the foreign culture's arbitrary ballet of social convention, flourishes of speech and gesture that possess no underlying logic, not really realizing that the exact same movie could be made about them. It's basically, well, I learned this in my culture. You're telling me I have to unlearn it for this culture?
I'm not eating that.
These movies approach autistic loneliness and disorientation, but they do not quite match it. Because for these movies to work, a viewer needs a home culture. A culture that feels comfortable, that they know inside and out, so that the other culture being represented appears foreign in comparison. But being autistic can mean not having a home culture, because they haven't yet cataloged the hula hoops of rules and sub-rules, or because their knowledge of a culture did not make them believe in that culture. So being autistic can feel very unlike a culture clash. It can mean feeling like a guest in every culture with no safe culture to retreat to, except the FNAF lore subreddit. That's why the overfitting model works better. You don't need a home culture or an exoticized portrayal of the East. You just need video game knowledge. A player, autistic or not, will trust the video game patterns. They will believe that they can learn everything about a game's NPCs by following the tutorial or listening to what the NPCs are telling them to do. Even though they know that no one in real life would ever tell them emotionally what they need from them, they could very easily be tricked into complacency by the aesthetics of traditional gift-giving, hurt-feeling NPC interactions, and instead have to sort through a complex web of systems and shifting context-specific rules that won't be explicitly articulated. Like, in real life, if you give someone a bunch of gifts without knowing them, a la Stardew Valley, I learned they might actually like you less and take advantage of you more. A game like Crosscode never lets its players get too comfortable with one type of solution. Real-life social interactions are exactly the same. An autism game should have no end goal. I used to have nightmares of a bathtub faucet turned up to maximum force, water gushing out loudly. I had waking visions too. I was scared, partially by the sound, partially by the strength of the water jet. But you know, tractors are noisy too. I never dreamed of electric tractors. It was more than that. Something about the water's texture. When I was 13, the nightmares stopped. Then when I was 17, the same feeling came back, invoked by a Junji Ito book. The book started with a man who saw spirals everywhere he went. In the bathwater, in noodles, until he stretched himself into one. I shut the book in cold fear. Spirals in the faucet water. That's what it was. Autism tends to lower belief in God. 2 studies, one Canadian and one American, found that the higher the autism score of a respondent, the less likely they were to report a fervent belief in God. The researchers did what they do with every autistic study and linked it with theory of mind. Theory of mind is the idea that autistic people struggle to imagine other people's minds. Therefore, the researchers concluded autistic people must struggle to conceive of someone different than themselves, a God. There are a lot of problems with this conclusion. The theory of mind concept is, to quote lauded scholars Morden and Melanie, empirically questionable and societally harmful. Here is the traditional theory of mind test. In a false belief task, a child is introduced to 2 puppets, one named Anne and one named Sally. The child watches Sally put something like a marble inside of a basket. Then Sally leaves and Anne moves the marble from the basket to a new location, like a box. When Sally returns, the child is asked, where will Sally look for her marble? If he answers the new location, the box, the child has failed the false belief task. Theory of mind was made an autism thing based off of this test, despite the fact that any number of conditions have also produced more frequent failures on a false belief task. Growing up with fewer socioeconomic adult relatives, blindness, deaf Down Williams syndrome, Prader-Willi syndrome, cerebral palsy, neurofibromatosis, exposure to prenatal smoking or drinking. The article also points out just how difficult it has been to reproduce false belief results, and how this test might be more likely attributed to a communication deficit. It appears far more likely that a decreased belief in God can be attributed to 1. A decreased ability to buy into collective meaning making, even in the face of social pressure. Autistic people tend to struggle with learning social norms, and even if they consciously try to learn it, the belief just sometimes isn't there. And if you're an autistic person who doesn't learn the norms, and you're in a religious community that isn't very nice about that kind of thing, then you might reject religion altogether. 2. Pattern recognition erodes faith. Not for everyone, but for me and a lot of the autistic people I know, autism shields us from meaning making in the traditional sense. There is just as much meaning to be found in making pixels appear and disappear as there is in honor, worship, and longevity. The same patterns that sustain spiritual practice exist everywhere else. You look to nature and your autism generates shape patterns. You look to people and it generates social patterns. You look to popular anime and you see, get that out of my face. The whole world can be boiled down to an equation or to categories. You find bits of your special interest wherever you can. Meaning abounds. That said, there are religious autistic people, obviously, and for them the patterns are manifest proof of a higher power. They've figured out how to knit the individual patterns into a cohesive tapestry. Regardless, the patterns are meaning, either on their own or as fingerprints from Earth's dev team. And by meaning, I'm speaking of all kinds. Joyful, painful, frustrating, unjust. The autistic sense of justice consists of meaningful patterns. Everywhere you see people getting taken advantage of, people being lied to. My thing is small businesses dying. It's kind of crippling. I have to avoid family-owned bodegas because it makes me really sad. Special interests are also process-based. We get to derive pleasure from repeated engagement with a topic. The day the special interest is fully explored and the dopamine stops coming, that's a loss, not a victory. There's a genre of game exemplified by Minecraft, Terraria, and Starbound. I wouldn't use the tag sandbox because sandboxes end. These games snag you into a cycle of lumberjacking and ore whacking, a cycle which persists, like the production of FIFA games, forever, long after the bosses have been slain and the achievements have been got. These games are satisfying because you get to rest your head on your memory foam mattress next to someone else's memory foam Minecraft bed, or perfect your 20 chest organizational system, or design a redstone slaughterhouse / giant ATM and watch the government subsidies come rolling in. At some level, you're conscious of the fact that there is no endgame, and that your momentum is circling back onto itself like a perpetual motion machine. Your goal is, really, process-based. Create the ideal gameplay loop by optimizing your fighting, gathering, creating routine. I take a really long time to finish video games. It's actually really embarrassing, but apparently I'm not the only autistic person to treat games this way. Like a secondary world to live in, not a storyline to conquer. I found one person who spent time in Divine Divinity just cleaning its old abbey, lighting torches and removing the trash and ignoring the main plotline. They say the game wasn't even designed for cleaning mechanics. Others spent 100 hours on a 20-hour game, or 130 hours on a 60-hour game. Movies sometimes honor this. They portray autistic fixation, an autistic protagonist ensnared by patterns or details or their special interest. But games with no end, where the goal is to find meaning in the rote gameplay, those do a better job at getting you, the player, to be ensnared, to get caught up in the smallest picture. Fractal polygons imprinted with ray-traced light, the ding of precious metal pitched off a few hertz depending on the type. Or, you know, maybe you play deathmatch Minecraft with your friends and mainly just screw around, and this is far from your experience. Maybe I'm the only one who combined a Pokemon mod with a new biome mod and sexy shaders and had my most spiritual experience. Aging feels cruel because it erodes our work before obliterating it. Loss of capability takes us back to dreaded infancy. This regression threatens the life of autistic people at any age, and with it the chance that we might gratify every patronizing stereotype. Autistic burnout really doesn't get enough hype, probably because those of us experiencing it are not in the mood for communication. It comes with the usual depressing grab bag, anxiety, paralysis, increased sensitivity to stimuli, and more, but the skill loss is the most invasive part. Going to tie your shoes one day and finding a noodly tangle and no rabbits circling trees. It sends your grown self back to learning counting and organizing from scratch. It makes me feel like some grotesque reverse boss baby. Losing organizational skills, attention, communication skills, memory. I've even lost my sense of cringe. I can't tell the difference. Like a phantom limb, I sometimes lean on the specter of a skill I used to have. I grab a clump of papers and scan technical writing with such a natural motion, you would almost believe I was reading it. When someone asks you to do work I've forgotten how to isn't really an acceptable response. I've never seen a movie about autism portray autistic burnout properly. And again, it comes down to the medium. We spend less time with movies and even TV shows than we do with skill construction. Losing a skill feels like a loss because skills are pressure-cooked time. Thousands of hours compressed into prismatic process. A movie viewer has not made that investment to learn that skill. They've spent only 40 minutes with the character learning the taste of Skittles and popcorn. Watching someone struggle to tie their shoes may be pitiful, but it does not generate true grief. Darkest Dungeon has you make that investment. You recruit people to your team, named heroes with randomly generated humanity, strengths and weaknesses that simulate a personality. You learn to fight with them. You spend on them. You improve them. Stress mounts, a mechanic used by the game to communicate just how unnatural it is for your party to press so far into the dark. But you push them there, past their limits, forcing a metamorphosis from desperation to militance, until they break. A character pushed too hard can acquire afflictions, conditions that alter their effectiveness in combat. Some afflictions help partially, while screwing you in other ways. Paranoid slashes your damage and accuracy, but bumps your dodge and speed. But other afflictions completely maim a character. The masochist trait triggers pain-seeking actions at random. Your character will refuse to retreat, refuse to be healed, even as the enemy melts them to bone and tendon. You can just feel the hours spent honing this character being bloodlet. It evokes the loss of a skill, the obstruction of thought to action. These characters are supposed to be your in-game avatars, your will scattered across a multitude of obedient limbs. So when one goes rogue, it is as if a part of your person has been co-opted. It's not quite a perfect simulation because recovery is quantifiable. You can heal afflictions by bringing stress down to zero, through a predictable amount of cavorting and or worshipping. When autistic burnout takes a skill, it threatens to keep it. I don't know if I'll ever regain what my memory was ever again, which by the way is kind of why I take long to make video essays. I know my grip on retaining random facts right now isn't that great, and that's like the one metric we've imposed on being sort of an intelligent, good nerd. So I'm like constantly aware I'm gonna get like a detail wrong and that it will compromise the entirety of my credibility. Darkest Dungeon has something like this. Visits to the abbey or the tavern force trade-offs. Autistic burnout is all about trade-offs. Recovery requires rest, and rest is costly. Flip open that coin purse and ball out. Spend career progress, GPA points, interpersonal intimacy. Like those heroes in their abbeys, I apologize 1,000 times a day, ritualistically, internally, to the friends whose time and care I've bartered away for substandard return. Someone has to pick up my slack. Someone has to work while I rest. Totally unrelated, my therapist once told me that my dominant emotion is shame. Interacting with Darkest Dungeon's world makes you feel the riskiness of recovery. It's not the healthy pulse of a Nurse Joy machine or the sterile gush of an FPS first aid kit. By putting your character through the pains and pleasures of the flesh, you risk treatment quirks. A character that is flagellated too well by a local nun might become a flagellant. A classic TV trope's high-powered hero whose stress can only be soothed by a whip. Visiting the tavern can turn an upstanding dungeon crawler into a tippler, someone who can only reduce their stress through the bitter drink. Plus, recovery takes time cloistered away in monastic trance and not spent fighting to keep your team alive. You have to send someone to the Darkest Dungeons, so letting one of your strong, dependable heroes rest can mean death for those you do pledge to the task.
In time, you will know the tragic extent of my failings.
This movies lack, because viewers never make decisions, so they don't feel burdened by the outcome. In movies, characters own their choices. Viewers can usually blame the movie people, the protagonists of Edgerunners, for in-universe blunders, getting my favorite character killed, that we, mighty viewers, would have so easily and wisely avoided. A movie's predetermination constrains, but a game's free will suffocates. A video game about autism shouldn't have an ending, and neither should a video essay about autism. This whole channel is process-based, so you should go and watch my other videos and enjoy that process. My voice is so fucked. I recorded this so many times. I should say, go to my Patreon and subscribe there to help me play games to talk about. But honestly, I feel very guilty when people donate, because I have in the past taken far too long to make videos. I will keep making them, but I have to leave time in my schedule for periods of self-criticism that lead to no productive output. Here are my current subscribers who are still here. Thank you guys so much.
Tlotig, A Virtual Life, Orbital Hippie, Biconite, Liberty and Yaniga, Blood Mime, Evie Haste, Daniel, and Jade Faye.